So 8 years ago, I proposed a course called Ecology and Religious Education. And we began in that course every third week to walk our campus. This is a Google view. This now shows part of what our farm is. I don't know if the lights could go down a little bit, maybe, if that's possible. If not, so the Google map of our campus, about 80 acres, comes down over to here. And of that 80 acres, when I was first there 8 years ago, we mowed about 24 of it. We have some woods up in this area, which the maintenance staff call Boot Hill. And under those trees were all refrigerators, mattresses, microwave ovens, and tons of concrete breakdown from a road project where they just dumped it on our campus. We have the student housing buildings here. We have our library, our classroom space, and administrative space. There, I think I pointed to the right building. No, that's our dining hall. Our lab, it's in there. and we would walk campus, and part of what we would do is imagine the space. And so, as many of you all know, our understanding of a college campus is really, one of the primary images is English manners of the 17th century with wide open lawns, the large buildings that kind of oversee the campus and kind of give a sense of stature and of peace and of vision. And we're walking the campus, and I as a professor may slip up every now and then and cuss, and particularly when there's mowers going by or blowers going by, and the idea of the amount of fossil fuel we were spending on our campus in order to maintain lawns really rankled me. And so 8 years ago, all of this was grass and lawn, and we began to walk and taught the class 9 years ago now. Taught the class once, then 2 years later, taught it again. And after that second time I taught the course, group of students from both classes, we got together and we decided maybe it was time for us to buy a farm. Maybe it was something we could do together to try to live in a different communal engagement. And it was either I think it was just the second meeting, maybe the third meeting of all of us coming together. We did a brief audit around the table as to how much student debt was there. And the 12 people around the table, including myself, we came close to $1 million in student debt, as 800 and something thousand. So all of a sudden that vision gets truncated. The idea that we would have the ability to buy land in that particular part of the country was out of control. So I went back, I reported to the faculty, I told them some of what we were doing, what we were thinking about. And from that discussion, the president began to think about starting a farm on our campus. And right now, we have that, and I'll get to that in a second, but part of when I think about the pedagogical engagement of theological education through an ecological vision, I use the work of David Orr as one of the significant thinkers around what environmental education would mean. And he would say the problem is not with education, the problem is education itself. So at the core of our education, I think this is true even in theological education, we privilege credentials and the idea of hitting certain marks, having certain aspects over a sense of how we build people in the midst of their own vocation. We privilege, even though theological education does a better job of this than many fields, we still privilege discrete disciplines over any kind of integration. And I think schools are doing a much better job of integrating how disciplines come together. But as schools, we rarely begin to think about our connections with the land around us, with the people around us, maybe through a lens of service, but not often through a lens of wisdom or of mutual serving together. And that we tend to privilege information and the transfer of information, and this would be one of my own little pet peeves. I think it gets worse with hybrid and online education. We privilege the transfer of information over the kind of construction of awe, of wonder, of hope, and what that might mean. And so Or it gives a different way to think about environmental education, that all education is environmental education, that it isn't information transfer, and that knowing itself deepens our responsibility in the world, and that we should weigh everything we know through how what we know impact people and communities, and that our practices and our stories need to be deeply connected to our place, and that the places, the context that we learn in the midst of actually shape what is learned. So what happens in those spaces, and part of that is it's really difficult to teach an ecological connected vision of the world in an air-conditioned classroom that's not challenged in that. It's really hard to talk about Earth community if you're in a place that excludes many parts of human community, let alone what Aldo Leopold would call the land community. And so all those contexts begin to teach. And what I realized in that moment as I'm walking with students, we were beginning the practice of what Doug Christie calls in his Blue Sapphire of the Mind, we were beginning the practice of contemplative placemaking. The idea of walking in a place and reimagining what life, vision, love, a spiritual engagement with the world can think and be differently. Here you see one of our farm communicator working with some children in Columbus just to show them this is where vegetables come from, and let's grow them. And these 3 and 4 year olds, it was a great day, actually made pizzas. They believed with what they picked, but we may have cheated a little bit with how the pizzas came together. And so we've ended up, that field that was being mowed, about 7 acres, is now about 5.5 acres under cultivation. The food this last year, this section here, these 2 hoop houses, this is actually an older picture. Over there we have 36 raised beds on the other side of that particular hoop house that exists that are double covered raised beds up to 6 feet. We produced about 13,500 pounds of food on this particular campus last year, of which a significant amount was served in the dining hall, along with relationships with about 40 other farmers within 50 miles to where we serve that. We have vegetarian, vegan, and locally sourced meat. It's part of our dining hall and our dining hall experience. And this is a bit of a timeline as to where we are. First ecology course, intentionally in there. There are some on the faculty that think there were a couple earlier in the 70s, but they disappeared. In 2012, we added ecology and social justice specializations, the MDiv and MAPT, first graduates in 2014. We currently have 12 to 14 specialized courses in ecology from different colleagues in different areas, as well as weaving ecological understanding and ecological hermeneutics into introductory Bible courses, introductory theology courses, those kind of things. We have the dining hall. We have local food. Our chefs are out of this world. We have a gentleman who trained at the highest end restaurant, the Refectory in Columbus, who just wanted to do local food. We have what agricultural folks at Ohio State call the shortest food chain they've ever seen, actually in demonstration, to where it's about 100 feet to go from farm to table. We 85% of our food is sourced from 40 farms within 50 miles. Those are all estimates. Last year we had a CSA from our produce that we produced for about 70 families to contribute some of that. We have a farm staff, many of whom have full benefits, some of whom serve in an internship perspective, so that's a whole other educational aspect of what's going on. We have a grant from a small local foundation for community food wellness initiative that's working with the Franklinton neighborhood and Hilltop neighborhood down on the southeast side of Columbus to work with urban farms and community gardens. We're currently in conversations with, it says 4, there might be a couple more, but with public institutions, including large land grant institution about 25 miles south, who just released a press release on Sunday about us being one of the examples they hope to live up to, which was pretty cool. And we're in conversation with them. We've installed solar panels, which I don't have a picture of. Thought I did. We don't have a picture of. They're about 15% of the energy for our classroom administration building. That's to be tripled in the next year and a half. Put in geothermal this last fall that helps with the cooling of those same buildings. We have a grant, and this is an important Wabash for teaching and learning. I mean, some of y'all know Dina Pence and that group there. We got a small grant that helped to change the conversation of our faculty. But prior to that grant, we had a significant number, or some colleagues who just couldn't see any connection between ecology and their work. And I think part of the challenge for that was they were still seeing ecology as an addition to what they were doing and not an integration from the very floor of what we do. As people of faith and folks who work in institutions that do theological, Christian seminary and rabbinical and other institutions, other faith traditions, we do our work leading towards a desire for a just, healthy world where everyone can thrive. And so the idea that ecology is a tack-on to a particular class, I don't want to say a field because we're so small, I might say the wrong field and people will associate with the wrong person, but the particular teaching you do this would be an add-on. I think it's a flawed hermeneutic. How do we begin to think about all of our education leading to a just, vital, healthy, vibrant world? And for us, it begins in food. It also begins in other forms of justice. I mean, one of the greatest, when we first changed our food system over, our dining hall director declared that she would never serve that. Her previous work for the 3 years prior were to be to open cans up from Gordon Food Services and dump them in the steam table and call that cooking. She did not last much longer. That was a decision the president made. But from that, we have folks who want to cook healthy food for our students. And I think the health of the overall student body and the faculty and the staff has changed because of that. And if you all want another great battle in your institution, remove a Coke machine. That apparently is this. It is one of the highest sins, apparently, you can inflict on some folks. And that's a battle that we fought. And then we have the grant that we're participating in today. I mean, one of the great privileges is to work with Jonathan and the Interfaith Center for Sustainable Development, and Fletcher and Harper and Laurel and Beth from Green Seminary Initiative and Green Faith and the work that's being done at Drew. And that, I think, in many ways, we were invited into that conversation because of the work we've been doing, and that's been an exciting thing. Two things that are coming up. There was in about 3 weeks, we will be partnering with Ohio Interfaith Power and Light, and we're beginning what we're calling a listening circles initiative with Dr. Melanie Harris and Dr. Jennifer Harvey, to where we're going to begin to at the church level, the faith community level, have conversations between African American, Hispanic, and white churches in what we call listening circles, to try to address the heart of so much of what we do. And how do we construct that? So this is a partnership with Ohio IPL that we're very excited about. We're also in conversation with a law school and a couple of undergraduate institutions. The one just up the road, just north of us, so Ohio Wesleyan, this spring we'll have a Seminary Hill Farm Week where they will only serve food from our farm for their students, and our farmer is working to help that out. It shifted some of the focal areas in our curriculum, and I promised Elaine I'd be done pretty quickly. Do have a timer. But part of what I think we have at the core of our discussion when we think about curriculum is how do we make meaning in relationship to communities, fellow creatures, and our place, and our places. We're trying to graduate students who ask those questions as they move into their vocation. How do we think about mind, body, and action in some form of balance to where anti-racism and anti-racist pedagogy is part of how we seek environmental justice, and along with a sense of deepening our sense of wonder in the sacred. As someone who has had in my life some activism throughout, as well as connection with activists, I think part of what happens in the midst of this is we forget that we ourselves are holy beings, and we forget and we lose the ability to recharge in the midst of action. And so with the sense of sacred and engaging with that, what does it mean to spark a vocational imagination? A student graduated a couple of years ago, went to a rural Ohio church that was leasing their land to a local farmer who was doing industrial agriculture. She got the community to decide that they would take back just a few acres from his work. 3 years ago, brought one of our students up to help them start a small farm in Symposium, Ohio. They've now, the first year, the person they brought up as a field education intern did most of the work. I just heard from the person who's currently there, Stan, who said he wandered in about 3 weeks ago, and they already have every table set up in the basement with heating pads and little grow areas, and we're starting about 5,000 different plants for planting in their garden this summer. Just kind of forgot to tell him this is what was going to happen next, because this is what we do. And that church in and of itself is now seen in Centerburg as someone who is directly addressing the food problems in their small little Ohio city. If you all have paid attention about what's happening in rural Ohio, there's not a lot of good news, and this is one of those good moments. The idea around climate change, around small ag, local food. We are in a unique place where we are somewhat suburban, ex-urban, very close to downtown Columbus with significant connections to a number of churches located in the city, and also within just a few miles of very rural Ohio. And that's telling me I've got 1 minute. And then courses on climate change and the challenge of species loss and loss of human and all of life, community, water quality, forests, oceans. And we seek to cultivate love of land community, just something beyond the human vision of the world. This is another view of the farm. This is where some of the hoop houses are. Now we're in the midst of planting, and both of about a dozen of the small hoops, raised beds, and both of the hoop houses there are full of plants for this fall. We're eating out of there. We're eating seasonally, so there is it's a time where you learn to love kale and turnips and carrots, and that's how we're eating, as well as the importance. One of the great benefits of our farm is anyone who tells you that young adults are lazy, have no vision for the world, have no understanding of how life works, are lying to you. Or if they tell you all they can do is play video games and look at their iPhones, they're lying to you. This is a group of students and farm interns and our executive chef. He's the older than young adult, many of whom work 12 to 14 hours a day during the growing season to make sure we eat well. And they do it because they're committed to that vision, not because of anything else. And they fully understand themselves to be someone who brings life into the world. And so, if for no other reason, the journey we started in 2008 is worth it just to be in relationship with these folks on our campus, many of whom would never look at a seminary. Two or three in that picture enjoy getting us out on the farm so they can tell us how foolish we are to think about God. But the conversations are changing. And so in relationship, as we make meaning together, we begin to have deeper connections. But their commitment to what we do is absolutely essential.